are literally shaping the planet.
Purpose is the only pathway to a regenerative future.
We have a choice to stay with the status quo or to change.
What is the point of trying to be just resilient when we can actually innovate?
Hi, everyone. I'm Niran, CEO and co-founder of Quant AI. Basically, what we built is a IoT-based solution for the construction industry to improve safety and productivity. We combine wearables such as smart badges and wristbands and hard hat tags to get real-time information on what's happening on a project in terms of labor and equipment and material, and to provide real-time insights to save money and lives.
That's perfect. Thank you. Brad, you want to give us an overview of who you are, what you do, and what you're working on at HammerTech?
Sure, Niran, I can't wait to hear more. So Brad Zabone, co-founder and EVP of North America of HammerTech. HammerTech is an operational platform that's focused on safety and quality. I guess, the differentiation around what HammerTech does is it's around allowing customers to digitize their processes rather than documents on the job site. And so what's that allowed our customers to do is connect those workflows. And then, I guess the future and where we're heading at the moment is exactly where kind of Niran is connecting those workflows to the enriched data and the sensory data and the wearables on site. So looking forward to discussing today.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, Devin, here to introduce yourself and what your team at Hilti is working on.
Sure, Brian, and thanks for having us. It's great to be here, and it's great to be here with Brad and Niran, so hopefully I can contribute a little bit to the conversation. So I'm a director at the tech office for Hilti. So what I do is lead venturing, acquisitions, partnerships for Hilti from a North American perspective. Hilti as a company is a construction tools and services company. So traditionally European-based, but today we are present in 120 countries, play across the construction value chain. We make tools, we make materials, we make asset tracking software, and so on. Particularly in connectivity, we play in multiple domains. We look at tools, we try to build connectivity in tools through Bluetooth and stuff. We look at connectivity solutions on the job site. We have OnTrack, which is an asset management platform. But increasingly, we are also thinking about other forms of connectivity, whether it's in the spaces of worker productivity, or it's in the spaces of smart materials. So for us, connectivity lies end to end, and it includes building related assets, it includes movable assets, and it includes pre-construction, construction, and operate. It's about bringing all of this together. So I think we're still very early in the journey, but this is a very important space for us. Look forward to it.
That's perfect. And Vivin, I'm going to let you keep rolling with that because you were kind of touching on my first question for the panel, which is I kind of want to hear from each of you on where you think the built environment is today in terms of a connected job site. What are we actually capable of achieving today in terms of connected job sites?
So I would say there's a wide range. There's some sites which are technologically very advanced, and there's some sites where there's no connectivity, where everything is paper-based, right? So I also come from a little bit of a mining background. So I've seen mining sites in Australia where there's just one person who's running the mine. It's completely autonomous across everything. Equipment is autonomous, communication is all synced, and so on. Construction is not there yet. Today, elements that we see on job site we see Wi-Fi, right? We see some connected tools. We see some pilot deployments of worker connectivity, and smart materials is still in early stages. But I would say we are in very, very early stages of deployment of connectivity solutions on job sites because there aren't standards today which can bring everybody together. As Niran would tell you, LoRa's the best thing since sliced bread, but there's also others who would say that about Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and narrowband and so on and so forth, right? So it's just that there's so many different protocols that you could use, and not all tools talk to them. Some talk to them, some don't. So standardization will take us a long way in terms of increasing adoption on the job site.
Oh, that's perfect. And Niran, you just got called out a little bit there. So I'm going to let you field the next part of this question. So go for it.
Yeah, I think thanks for commenting on that, Vivin. We've seen a huge increase on connected job sites. Recently with as Vivin was mentioning, there's multiple. Previously, like the if we were using Wi-Fi or even just RFIDs or Bluetooth, the limitations were due to the dynamic nature of the job site. The way that you collect information was very limited. Actually, you'll have to run wires everywhere. You'll have to have internet everywhere. And in a construction job site, when you don't even have like a wall built, having internet there is not possible, right? So fortunately, those limitations are overcome by new technologies such as LoRaWAN, which we are currently using, or there are other different forms right now also that can enhance that data collection from the job sites. So there's a lot of opportunities in there in terms of how we can bring that level of predictability in a job site like shop floors, because ultimately we've seen that increase in productivity in manufacturing, but how do you bring that to construction, right? That's the whole goal here, actually, and I can go into the depth of that later on, but yes, the data standardization across industry becomes a lot of work, because everybody has different ways of operations. Even for us working, every company has a different way to collect the data, and somehow hopefully there will be some industry standardization as to like how do we aggregate and provide better insights.
That's great. And we're definitely going to get into the challenges in a second. And one of those big ones I want to talk about is the standardization of data. But before I do that, Brad, you want to field this first question for us and just kind of give us a sense of kind of where you think we are today in terms of a connected job site?
Sure. I mean, with Vivin's point, being Australian and knowing kind of the big BHP and Rio mines where literally one person is operating a mine, I think that we are in the very infant stages of the connected job site. I think there are still a lot of sites that haven't even digitized processes yet. So, connecting the job site to non-digitized processes, you only get so much of the benefit. I think things like connectivity are being overcome, and I think we're in the early stages of overcoming those hurdles, figuring out what the compelling use cases of a lot of the kind of tools out there, whether it be computer vision, sensory data, wearable data, whatever it may be. I think we're very much in the kind of the research and the fun stage. I think 5 years ago or 3 years ago, people would have called them toys. I think today they're becoming less about being toys and actually having some functions. So some areas like production tracking is probably an area that is showing that kind of past that infancy stage, and it's actually showing some compelling use cases, especially during COVID. And so I think, companies at the moment are working out their digital strategies. Companies like ours and Vivin's and Naran's are working out how do we show the value and how do we bring things together. And I think the one of the major points that I always talk about is access to data by customers in a structured format, which allows kind of a customer to decide what tools they want to play with to bridge that cyber physical gap, and not always just relying on us always having the talk. I guess is the big hurdle, because sometimes we are the hurdle. We have resource constraints, etc. So I think we're just at the infancy stage, the fun stage, and I think there's lots of opportunity over the next 10, 15 years as we kind of head towards more of that automation and probably a more off-site manufacturing building, etc.
No, that's great. And so let's get into some of those challenges that are kind of preventing us from actually having connected job sites today. And I had two listed that I wanted to talk about, but if you all have observed others, definitely feel free to bring those up as we talk about this. But the first two I wanted to point out, when I look at this space, is connectivity still is a major issue. How do you enable a connected job site so that the different parts and pieces and equipment and people on the job site can actually be connected to some network? It is expensive to connect a job site. Job sites, by definition, when they're on site, are temporary. So you're going to make that investment. You need something that you can easily take down. Job sites are also always changing. So you need a way to constantly update and make sure that that job site stays connected as it progresses through different stages. And then the second piece, and Vivin, your former colleague Greg, I wrote a great article on this, but there are so many different things on a job site that can connect data. So whether it's tools, equipment, people, smart materials, regardless of what it is, everything can be sending some sort of data somewhere, which somehow needs to be processed. So the need for standardization of that data and figuring out what data actually matters and what doesn't matter on the job sites and what's going to be usable is still a major barrier that I observe in the space. And how different startups can get access to this data so that they can utilize it to create more features and more products that actually add value to the end customer. So that was a long-winded way of setting you guys up for the question, which is, what are some of the challenges that we still face when we look at connected job sites looking forward? And I'll just go in reverse order. So Brad, if you want to go first on this one, go for it.
Sure. Hamatech started off and still is majority real-time data. So we run into, obviously the connectivity is a big issue, whether it be, especially probably more so in North America than in Asia Pacific, in terms of the telecommunication network that we generally rely on rather than site Wi-Fi. We are obviously seeing clients play with a myriad of different tools. So whether it be offline actual sentries where we just, they're bulk downloaded once a day, so it's not in real time, whether it be, Wi-Fi mesh, whether it be usage of, cellular networks or temporary access points. I don't think that there's going to be one silver bullet. For rural projects, maybe, Starlink and stuff like that will start playing more of a role, who knows. But, on the actual job site itself, I don't see in the near future personally, it's going to be a myriad of and a plethora of different kind of solutions, and the best way for each platform or piece of technology, you're going to have to figure out kind of with the client as things improve how to actually get that job site connected. Because I just, in the near future, don't see any kind of silver bullets. We're not going to have a purely 5G rolled out network, and so whilst connectivity on site is going to continue being a thorn in the side of the connected job site for, I'd say, the medium term, at least. It's one that, since being in business since 2014, we've seen a huge shift in, both bandwidth, connectivity, speed to get Wi-Fi on site, cost of, and companies now becoming aware that during, the build phase, getting that temporary access points in it, actually putting that into the plans of the building so that, as you build, you are getting access points along the way rather than, getting up to level 10 and going, oops, we need Wi-Fi here. So that's kind of my opinion on job connectivity. And I'll come back around, I'll let other people speak, but I'll come back around on the data front, because I think that's a broader discussion.
Well, I think that's great. And I think it's funny you mentioned Starlink. I mean, eventually we're going to have to stop looking to Elon to bail us out of every sort of innovation and industry challenge we face. But yeah, he's got it all covered right now for us. And Elon, we trust, I guess. But Niran, if you wanted to give us your response to that, please.
Yeah, all I see is opportunities, actually. I don't see challenges. I'm just kidding, actually, but yes. He's not
a founder of a startup.
we all need optimistic people, right? I like to be real.
Yeah, but yes, I mean, every challenge is an opportunity for you to innovate and bring a solution, right? So,
Right.
Yes. So traditionally, there was limitation of network on a job site, and that's why, we went with LoRaWAN that can cover, we have job sites that covers like industrial like manufacturing plants for solar vehicles, electric vehicles, that covers like with one or two gateway, you're covering the entire job site, right? And data centers, like massive acres of lands covered with one or two gateways, actually, right? Which wouldn't have been possible with Wi-Fi connectivity, actually, no. But then as Vivin was mentioning and you were mentioning, right, we just need to collect some amount of the most important data only, because if you overload the server, you're just wasting time and space, right? So and that's the other benefit of LoRa, is that we just collect, or our sensors are optimized to collect only the information that is needed, and primarily to safety being the number one, actually, because ultimately, I mean, from both perspective in terms of data collection, as in is this data relevant for us? So safety data is always relevant, actually, because it saves lives eventually, right? Saving lives is the number one factor that everybody should think about, and then even from a cost perspective, the safety data becomes very important, because yes, every safety incident costs us like $37,000 in the US, right? So every week you can avoid one incident. If you can avoid 3 or 4 incidents, you're basically you're on a good track, and then the insurance cost, right? So that is the primary, the safety being the biggest one. And then, but also from the from when connected job sites and labor tracking comes in, like, we always know that, like, it always comes about privacy, right? Where are we in terms of privacy, actually, and that's why the safety piece is so important, because we can actually, like, save lives. So then some of the exchanges of privacy probably is okay, or we can hide those information, like productivity information can be hidden, So that's where I think is the safety, keeping safety as a number one factor, basically, like, brings everybody in the same page, actually, And in terms of because having to input the data manually on a tablet or a phone, it's still not real time. And I always go back to this comparison of saying that if you were to input the number of steps you've taken on your Fitbit, it wouldn't work, right? Because you just cannot count the number of steps you've taken in a Fitbit, right? So that real time is only possible using, that connected job sites, and I think it's exciting to see, like, Hilti and other companies like Hammertech bringing those pieces of together, and making the fully connected job sites.
And Vivin, maybe if you want to touch a little bit on the data and the collection of that data. I know Hilti has a really strong strategic interest in this space, and I think you'd have some great insights on how you guys are looking at that and what actually is collecting data on job sites and how you're thinking about that strategy.
It's everything's collecting data on job sites today. So break this up. See, data is foundational, right? For you to make any kind of decisions, data is foundational to ensure that you have enough information for making decisions. But to get to that stage, you have to build trust in the data. One of the issues with deployment on solutions in the market today is sometimes there's not enough trust in data which is collected. For example, they're missing data points, erroneous data points. So this is why there's still a reluctance to move from paper-based or Excel-based solutions to completely automated solutions. So that's the first step. And to do that, you need to have backup plans. For example, it might not work that you just have one form of connectivity solution. You might want to have a combination of LoRa, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cellular. It might make sure that you have backups in case of one or the other being missing, right? So that's the first stage. Once you have the data available, you also need to have it in usable formats, because data has to be fine-tuned to the stakeholders. Different people have different workflows. So unless you're collecting it in a format that is understandable to them, it's very difficult, because innovation in construction is incremental. If you're disrupting their workflows completely, they're not very likely to adopt that solution today. So you have to make it understandable and still an advancement of what they're doing. And once you've achieved these two steps, then you start building the data sets, right? Or whether it's a data set for workers, it's a data set for tools, it's a data set for buildings, and you can start running analytics on it. Analytics is something that's important, because then you think about AI at that level, which is a step to automation. So eventually, if you can automate a process, that's when you achieve true efficiency, right? But there are multiple steps to get from where we are today to that stage.
Awesome. All right, let's jump into some rapid fire stuff real quick. And Brad, hands up. So I'll give you a quick, if you want to jump in there before I ask.
20 seconds, just 20 seconds.
Go for it.
I just think that one thing, so I mean, I'm speaking at the Handsome Wade event as well this week around construction analytics and a big guest around the connected job site. I just guess the one thing that I'm passionate about, I want to put forward, is that we can't forget the human element in all of this, right? So I think one big mistake that we all do as technology vendors is, yes, the vision is automation, because I think that is true efficiency, and I totally agree with Vivin says. But I think we can never forget the journey that we're going to be taking, and that construction is innately a human resource, industry. There is always going to be a need, reducing over time, for a human to have that data in front of them to make a decision. And I think, one thing around the connected job site that's really going to grow over the next 3 to 5 years, I think the focus point of all of us should be is exactly what we're talking about. We're all saying the same thing, which is how do we bring all this data together, connect the dots to then put in front of people better information, enriched information from the job site, which is purely real time, which is what Niren's saying, but to the workflow and the processes of the people making those decisions. I think that's the key, because just one by itself doesn't allow that kind of compelling user story across all the processes. So I just wanted to just throw in that point and open to kind of near and all.
That's great, and I'm glad you started to go down this talk around the future, because jump in your time machines, go 10, 15, 20 years in the future. What part about connected job sites makes you each most excited about what the future capabilities could be? And obviously you guys don't have to give away the secret sauce of your companies. But if there's kind of one or two things that you look at and you go, man, when this happens, it's going to be a game changer for, you personally and your company or the industry. Where do you see that if you really are forward looking?
Who's kicking off?
Yeah, go for it. You said the first word, so you get to.
Okay, cool. No problems. Probably is one. I'll say two things. One is what I'm looking forward to for probably Hamatech, and one that I'm looking forward to for where the industry is 10, 15 years from now. So one for Hamatech, which is probably more so over the short to medium term, probably more medium term, is where, so Hamatech has processes that cover workforce management, online orientations, pre-construction management of all the safety and quality submittals, equipment permits, basically anything that happens on the job site, concrete pours, drywalling, whatever the processes are, it's in Hamatech. But today that is very much living in the cyber world, right? So it's people interacting with, an iPad or a phone, and it's putting that data in. So as Niran said, it isn't true real time because the person is typing it in. So I agree with that. I like it. I guess what excites me most around what the future holds and for our customers. So, we're on about $70-80 billion worth of work on about 40,000 projects worldwide. And I guess the bit that excites me is sensory data and wearables and the rest of it, that information flowing through to those non-real-time workflows and actually starting to allow someone that's doing a pre-task plan in the morning that says, hey, look, I'm using a crane at this time. And then some environmental sensor goes off and says, there's wind gusts here, stop your crane, or someone's over there and it says, wear some PPE because our decibel sensors are going off, right? Or a client's complaining about noise and you've got some vibration sensor that says, hey, listen, it's actually under the amount of noise that we're allowed to on this site. So I think these stacks of benefits there in the short term. 10, 15 years from now, I think, what excites me is probably honestly the lower incident rates. So digitizing stuff is going to lower the incident rates a little bit. Automating bit by bit is going to lower it. And I think 10, 15 years from now, a lot more of the building will be done offsite. I think a lot of the transport, I don't know, we'll cross our fingers, but a lot of the logistics and transport will be probably more automated. The lifting of said kind of pre-fabricated and manufactured modules will be a lot more automated. There's companies like Lift Build and that in the US, companies like Hickory in Australia with Hickory Building Systems that link up with Mace in Europe. It's starting to look at how do we start automating both the, logistics of deliverables and the manufacturing. So that's kind of what you remove people from it and you automate processes, you're innately going to make a safer job site. That's probably what I'm most excited about.
Brad, that's great. And Vivin, I'm going to tee you up for this next part of it. And I'm actually going to combine two questions because we only have 5 minutes left in this. And looking at the future, I see industrialized construction as a major disruptor that's going to kind of disrupt every element of our current built environment. So with that context in mind, and if you kind of buy into that as well, how do you think that impacts a connected job site in the future if more is done in offsite manufacturing type settings?
It impacts us significantly because the workflows will change, right? The communication between the manufacturing or the factory and the job site needs to improve. The logistics management needs to improve, especially prefab. The time of arrival of these materials on site is very, very important so that your workflows are not disrupted. So as for you to improve communication, scheduling and all of that, connectivity on job site has to improve. Similarly, tracking has to improve for these materials. Therefore, IoT not just is present on the job site, it's also present off the job site. So everything is tracked all through the life cycle. And between. And between, absolutely. Handover is super important. And when Brad was speaking, I almost felt like he was reading my mind because single truth. And in terms of seamless exchange of information from in different participants on the job site and off the job site is critical, because that is what will enable huge productivity gains as we move forward. Also, as I think about prefab, there are two mega trends emerging, right? One is offsite construction and one is robotics on job sites. So anything that can be scaled and can be built non-custom or at scale will go offsite. Anything that needs to be custom built will probably move the robotics direction. So again, these two trends need to talk to each other, because the same site could have both of these trends happening at the same time. So it's very important that the modes of communication are refined, and that needs robust channels of IoT being established, both on the job site as well as off the job site.
That's great. And Niran, feel free to respond to anything that Vivin or Brad said, or either of the questions that I asked there. You got a lot to react to.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep it really short. I think the short-term future is being able to predict how long it's going to take to build a building, how many hours it's going to require, how much material is required, where your materials are. Is it in the flow? Is it in the construction site, or is it just shipped right now? Right. So that's already happening right now. So
more transparency across the entire supply chain.
Yes, and in the long future, we're basically being able to like standardize all this information and looking at a macro level. Right now, we're looking at single job sites right now, right, or like a 4 or 5 job sites, or like a one customer right now. Ultimately, at the macro level, bringing the global trends of like a national trends of where this industry is going towards, like what is the productivity, benchmarking safety trends, and using that data to actually make better judgments of, okay, should this be built offsite or should this be built on site, and how long it's going to take for me to build on site here versus building it on offsite, So those are the levels of data that we're collecting to, what is the industry standards, like where we can make better predictions on a project.
Oh, that's great. And we had a couple audience questions, so I want to make sure that we get a chance to kind of jump into those real quick, because I do like the question that's being asked, and I think it's a good one. But who is the buyer and the operator of these connectivity solutions on the site? Who's actually expected to pay for this sort of stuff and these sort of solutions? I think we get a couple different perspectives here from a large incumbent, and then a couple startups that are trying to break into this space and find who their buyer is. So feel free to jump in, guys. I won't call anybody out, but if anybody has any immediate reactions on where they found the most success and where they see the greatest adoption, feel free to share that.
So I would say on a large job site, if you're talking about connectivity solutions, typically the GC leads the way, right? Because it's all for all the trades at the same time. Unless the GC is saying, specifically telling the subcontractor not to use it, typically this is where it starts, right? But if the connectivity solution is very trade linked, for example, worker tracking or equipment tracking, and it is specific to that trade, then the trade pays. So it just depends on what kind of solutions you're talking about.
Yeah, I agree with Vivin. I think it can be owner, GC, subcontractor. I think predominantly it's the biggest beneficiary, which is generally the general contractor. The owner always stipulates what they want to occur on the job site, and the GC generally will bid on behalf of that. We only see on a few kind of major infrastructure projects like the LAX, $26 billion multi-year program, where there are some dictations around what they're wanting to see. But generally speaking, it's general contractor, and obviously if you want to track your tools and stuff like that, the subcontractor, but it's generally the person that gets the beneficiary of that, which is the general contractor.
Great. And Niran, any last thoughts?
Yeah, the same thing. I think if it was early stage, beginning of the project, owners definitely gets involved, right? So, and ultimately, even the sub is paying sometimes, he's going to bill it to the owner. So.
Awesome. Well, guys, I feel like we were just starting to get into this conversation, but our half an hour is up. So thank you all for again joining us. To the panelists and the attendees, if anybody does want to connect or ask any questions to the panelists, please jump in the Slack channel. Everybody is in there. So feel free to continue the conversation. And if you want to reach out to anybody one-on-one, that's a great spot to do it. But thank you guys again. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everyone.
Devin, great meeting you.
Great meeting you guys.
Have a good one. Bye.